where we'll discuss dating methods. Dating methods. So, till now, whatever we discuss, that is basically about the introduction of the archaeology. Also, we discuss the role of environment in archaeological site formation and cultural evolution. Different stages, different periods of archaeological culture, which are also relating to the geological deposition, geological formation. So we try to correlate this archaeological anthropology along with the other disciplines, including the social sciences, subject from the social sciences. So in this context, one question arises: if we are saying the temporal period, time frame of a particular archaeological culture. Suppose we are saying this particular artifact belong to this particular culture, or maybe we are saying this lower Baltic tool found from a particular site belong to 1.8 billion year old, or a particular artifact of Neolithic culture belong to 8,000 year old, or maybe one particular stone artifact belong to Upper Paleolithic culture is 20,000 year old, or whatever it may be. Or we can take example from the historical context also. We are saying that this particular architecture, monument, temple, buildings belong to the early historic period 200 year BC or BP. So thing is that when we are discussing about the historic archaeology, we might get some kind of literary evidences. Maybe sometimes we are having inscriptions, sometimes we are having manuscript, sometimes we are having books or any kind of published material. So from where it is very easy to trace, very easy to know the chronology, the time period, or the date of that particular building, structure, temple, or monument. Take an example. We can see from the historic context the Hati Gumpha inscription of Bhubaneswar, Dhauli inscription for Bhubaneswar, or the inscription present in the Qutub Minar.
Sir, not audible.
Uh, yeah. Hello, now it is audible.
No, sir, very slow.
Very slow. Okay, so let me increase the voice or change the thing. Just allow me 1 minute time. Let me change the mic. Hello.
Hello.
Now, now it is audible.
No, sir.
Still, could you please raise your volume, please? Because from my side connection is okay. From my side connection is okay. So now,
Sir, I am trying again.
yeah. Could you please restart or like that? Because my side connection is okay. ଶୁଣାଯାଉନି ତାଙ୍କୁ କହୁଛନ୍ତି। So now it is okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So shall we continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
So thing is that so we are discussing about the archaeological anthropology. So shall we start from beginning or we'll continue from the current position? Just we are discussing of the introductory part and we are trying to correlate these dating methods. So as we are aware that in archaeological anthropology we are studying the different materials of the past. It might be from the time period of lower Paleolithic period of Pleistocene era, or it might be from the historical archaeology of recent past. So thing is that whenever we are discussing about the formation of a particular site, formation of a particular material, or preparation or use of a particular material, or construction of any house, building, structure, temple, whatever it may be. So for each and every object, each and every artifact, there is a time period when that particular material was prepared, utilized, or constructed like that. So, but it is very easy for the historical archaeologists to know the time period, the date of that particular site, of that particular monument, of that particular building, structure, temple, etc. But on the other side, for the archaeologists, those who are working on the prehistoric archaeology or archaeological anthropology, for them it is very difficult to trace the date of a particular object. Why? Thing is that, as we discussed in the very first class, that history starts with the knowledge of writing. So when human beings started writing, from that time history started. So from that point of view, for any kind of building, construction, or archaeological monument, we are getting some type of evidences which indicates about the time period or the time when that particular site was under use or that particular monument was constructed. So that's why we are saying that 100-year AD, 200-year AD, 500-year AD, or 100-year BC, 200-year BC. Because for those kind of monuments, we are getting some kind of evidences. But it is not possible for the archaeological material of the prehistoric culture because that time writing was not invented. So now question is coming that if there is no written evidences, we are not having any kind of writings about the use of a particular material object, then how it will be possible to say that this particular prehistoric artifact, this particular index or this particular ringstone or this particular blade of Paleolithic, Mesolithic or Neolithic culture belong to this particular time period. My point is that last class we told that the time period what we are having since the beginning of human cultural evolution, majority part is coming under the prehistory. At that time, script was not invented. there was no writing evidences. Then how it will be possible to know? How it will be possible to say that this artifact belong to 80,000 year old? This particular object belong to 1 million year old. But now science has developed enough. There are different methods, different techniques to determine the chronology or date or time period of a particular object. So here in today's class we'll discuss three things, and these three things are very much related to determining the chronology, to know the dating techniques, to know the time period of a particular material. So as we discussed previous class, this archaeology or anthropology is a multidisciplinary subject where we used to take help of various subject, various discipline. That's why it is connected to each and everyone. So that knowledge, that interdisciplinary knowledge help us to identify, to trace the date of a particular site, of a particular culture. So here we'll discuss the different type of dates, how these dates help us to determine the chronology. So before that, we must have to know the relevance, use. And use is that these dates, whatever we are going to have in our discussion, are having some kind of implication in archaeology. Sometime what happened, we used to get some kind of date by comparing the date of another object. Take an example. Before going to discuss the archaeological dating method, we will take one example from our this class. Suppose in our class there are two students are present and we know the semester standard or class or subject of a particular student, and class is going on. So based on that, if we know these details, we can say the another student or student number 2 is belong to this particular class. Suppose in a day we are having 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 classes per day, 1 hour of each. So if some students are sitting in first class, that is from 10 a.m., and we are asking him about his class, whatever he will respond, we'll think that similar kind of responses we'll get from the student number B or C. So here what we are doing, we are comparing. We are getting data from one student, and on that basis we are saying that since this is same class, student are sitting together, second student or student number B also belong to this particular class. So here we did two things. One is, first we asked to one student and we got his information. That is the direct interaction. Directly we asked that student. But about the second student, we got some kind of indirect evidences. Means we asked to the student number A, and based on that, we what we assume that the student number B is also belong to that particular class. So to know data, in one case we are directly asking to a particular respondent, particular subject, and for another we are gathering, we are collecting data in an indirect way. So we are not directly asking to that student, but we are asking to somebody else, and based on that we are saying that this student belong to this culture. So In the similar way, in the similar way, in archaeological anthropology also, the archaeologists get the date time period of a particular object under study from two different methods. They use two different methods to gather the date of a particular object. So one is called relative method, relative method or relative chronology, and the second one is called absolute method or absolute chronology. As I told, the relative methods used to give us some kind of relative dates, some kind of relative dates. And absolute method used to give us a precise date directly from the object under study. So, so here we'll discuss these two methods and how these two methods are helpful, useful to determine the date and on what object. Because from archaeological context, we get different type of objects. Sometimes the objects are made of bones, sometimes made of stone, sometimes made of ceramics, pots, sometimes made of metals. Sometimes also we do get some kind of burnt or fired material, bone, or sometimes charcoal, the coal. Sometimes also we need to get some fossil remains. Sometimes also we are getting the glass and other things. So the material evidences from the archaeological context, it used to differ from site to site and culture to culture. Whatever evidences we are getting in lower Paleolithic culture, we may not get the similar material from the Neolithic culture. Or even if for the same cultural period, whatever material we are getting from India, we may not get the similar material in Europe or Africa. So it used to differ, it used to vary one from time to time, period to period, another is from place to place. And sometimes there is a variation in date or time of use. So based on the material, which material we are using, which material we are getting from the archaeological site, and belong to which cultural period, or what are the other associate evidences. So based on that, we take help of different methods of dating. Sometimes we compare this material with the other material. Sometimes we directly try to get the date from the collected evidences. So thing is that since the direct dating or what is called the absolute dating is not possible for all because of the availability of laboratory or might be because of the highly expensive methods which are not easy to affordable for all. So in such cases, the scientists, the archaeologists, they prefer to go for the relative method of dating. Sometimes the dates for a particular type of object, particular kind of materials are already established, already done by somebody else in another site. So in that case also, it is not required to go for the absolute date or direct date. because suppose two places are located in a nearby area or close to each other, and we are excavating both the sides, and from one side we got some kind of charcoal sample, some kind of bone material or some kind of ceramic remains, and we got the direct date from those material. So similar thing if we are getting from the nearby site, so we can compare their characteristic features, how they are prepared, what was what are the raw material, how it was used. So based on that, if you will get some kind of similarity, so no need to go for the direct date. So we can trace the date by indirect way. Take an example. Again, I am coming to the classroom. I am giving example from the classroom to make it further easier. So suppose in a classroom, we are having bench, desk, chair and table. Suppose we are having the date of manufacturing or year of manufacturing of a particular table or chair, and based on that we can say the another chair, the second chair which is present along with that, having the similar type of characteristic features, similar size, similar raw material, we can say that this chair or table also prepared during this particular time period. So here now we'll proceed towards the archaeological dating method. Suppose during excavation we are getting some kind of evidences of stone tool, stone artifacts of lower Paleolithic period or Neolithic period or Mesolithic period. And from the same site, same place, same geological context, same stratigraphy, we are getting some evidences of bones or human skeletal remains. So, in such cases, we can say that this particular person or this particular bone remains belong to lower Paleolithic period, and this particular person was using this particular stone tool or this hand axe or chopper or cleaver. So here, date we are getting for the lower Paleolithic tool, we are already having, it is established somewhere else, and along with that, if we are getting something, we are comparing, and based on that, we are saying this particular bones also belong to this particular time. So if it is not clear, I may get another example. I may give the another example, and I think it will help us to make it more clear. Suppose we are using a particular kind of weapon or artifact or a devices or material for transportation. So nowadays, for traveling from one place to another place, maybe we are using different motor vehicles. But years before, these motor vehicles were not present. Maybe our the villagers, forefathers, ancestors, they were using the bullock carts. Of course, nowadays also in some places these are in use, but majority people are using the vehicle what are present nowadays. So suppose take an example, the bullock cart. We know the time period of bullock cart prepared maybe 10 years before, 50 years before. And if we are getting similar material, we can say that this particular material prepared during this particular time. Or we may take another example. Nowadays, we all are using the Android version of mobile phone. But few years before, maybe 10 years before, these phones were not available. People are using the normal mobile phone, and before that, people are using the landline connection phone. So suppose we have the date, we know the beginning period of use of Android mobile phone, maybe 10 years before. We know the beginning period of normal keypad mobile phone, maybe 20 years before. We know the landline connection, digital telephone, maybe 50 years, 100 years before. So suppose we are getting a telephone, landline connection telephone somewhere else. So based on that, we might say this belong to this time period or this much year old. I'm not saying that nowadays also people are not using that phone, but using, but mainly it was under use during sorry, during that time period. So similarly here in archaeology also we used to make some kind of comparison. So now we'll go to the archaeological anthropology and we'll try to know what are the dating methods coming under the relative dating and what are the dating methods coming under the absolute method of dating and how these dates are helpful, how these dates are reconstructed, and what are the object, what are the material on what these dates are applicable. So here we'll see in two methods of dating what I told, the relative dating and absolute dating. So relative dating includes the stratigraphy, and also it includes the geological calendar, glacial calendar, fossil fauna calendar, river terrace, fluorine test, nitrogen dating, polynology, pertination. So these are the major relative dates, but it does not mean that it confined only to these. So there are some another dates also, and it is useful to determine the date of a particular object. Similarly, the absolute dates or the direct dating method includes the radiocarbon dating, also known as C14 or carbon 14 dating. It includes potassium argon dating. It includes thermoluminescence dating or also called TL dating. This absolute dating also include archaeomagnetic dating. Another absolute dating is dendrochronology or called the tree ring dating. It also includes the verb analysis, oxygen 16 by 18 ratio or oxygen isotope, then obsidian hydration dating. So these are few datings methods which are highly helpful and used to determine date from the archaeological context. So let's begin with the stratigraphy. This stratigraphy is a very simple but very interesting dating methods which provides some relative dates for the archaeological site, archaeological object. So let's start the meaning of this stratigraphy. So stratigraphy is a combination of two words. One is strata, strata, strata. Another is graphy, where strata stand for the layers, and graphy means the study, science. So study of layers is called stratigraphy. As we know that the deposition of Earth's surface or deposition of different soil on the surface is a continuous process. Deposition as well as the erosion is a continuous process. And when we used to move from one place to another place, sometimes we used to see different kind of layers on the river banks, close to the stream, or sometimes at the site of construction. In site of construction, when we are digging pit or any kind of hole, we are getting different kind of layers, different kind of strata, having different kind of soils that might be differ on the basis of the colors, sometimes white soil, red soil, brown soil, black soil, etc. etc. Sometimes also it used to differ based on the composition. Sometimes we'll see in some layers some sand particles are there. In some layers some stones are there. Sometimes the pebbles are there, boulders are there, and sometimes ceramics are there. Sometimes grasses are there, like that. So sometimes also we need to see the size of boulder used to differ from one layer to another layer, etc. So the colors, the composition, the thickness, or the associate find which present on the different layers help us to know the formation. As we told in last class, the geological law or super the geological law of superimposition. Geological law of superimposition, it indicates, it says about the deposition of layers. Suppose in a place, in a house, or anywhere, if we are not using that particular area, we'll see after few days or after few years, a layer is deposited on that. Inside the house also, if you are not cleaning, we'll see that the dust are deposited on the floor. In outside, if we are not cleaning, we'll see the bushes, the branches, the trees has grown, and later a particular layer deposited. So these are the law of geology. So the geological law of superimposition, you to study this kind of thing, this kind of formation of layers. So stratigraphy or the study of strata help us to know the formation of that particular layer. Suppose there are five, six layer, the topmost layer, the next to that, like this, we are excavating a particular site or we are studying a particular site. Sometimes we are seeing that the top layer we are getting the loose soil, top layer we are getting the loose soil, and bottom layer we are getting the comparatively hard soil, comparatively the hard soil. So in such cases, how we'll know the time period of these layers? So it used to help us in geology. They have already proved the formation of layer. Usually, from our archaeological anthropology point of view, when we used to study, our emphasis is more and more from the time period of human cultural evolution, when human culture evolved, and that is from the Pleistocene time period. So based on the available evidences, the soil what formed during the Pleistocene time, that is helpful to understand the different layers. So during Pleistocene time, we are having different artifacts, and when we used to excavate, we used to get those particular artifacts are found available from a particular deposit. In this context, we might note the example of laterite, the red stone that formed during the early part of Pleistocene, and above that, usually we used to get the loose laterite, the morum part. So These formations are belong to the Pleistocene geological era. In later during the Holocene time, we are having the deposition of silt, reds, particularly the red silt, and other kind of sand above the lateritic layer. Therefore, most of the cases we get the Paleolithic tool artifact, especially the lower Paleolithic tool, inside the laterite deposit. And we used to get microlithic tool above the hard lateritic soil and where the loose laterites are there. And Neolithic artifact we used to get on the silt deposit, which are comparatively recent and which formed during the Holocene time period. So, in this case, if you are studying different layers and we know the chronology of that particular layer, we know that time of formation of that particular layer, that help us to know the time period of a material. Suppose while we are excavating, we have excavated maybe up to 1 meter or 2 meter, and we got 8 to 10 layers. While we need to excavate the topmost layer, we need to call layer 1. Second layer, bottom to that one called layer 2, then layer 3, layer 4, layer 5, like this. So the numbering of layers is used to go from top to bottom. So suppose number 1 layer is located at the top and number 5 layers is located at the bottom. So in between we do have layer number 2, 3, 4. So while we are digging, we found some kind of stone tool from the layer number 4 and some another kind of stone tool or ceramic remains from the layer number 2. So what it indicates that the material what we are getting from the layer number 4 is older than the layer number 2, because as we told, the geological law of superimposition means one layer deposit indicates a particular time period and another layer deposits above that earlier layer. So one layer form, then after few days, few years, it will be covered with the second layer. Then again after few years or few days, it will be covered with the another third layer. Then above that, like this. So this deposition process is a ongoing process, and it used to continue for a long period of time. That's why the older deposit is always located at the bottom in normal cases. In normal cases, normal deposits. So always the bottom layer is older than the topmost layer, and topmost layer is younger than the bottom layer. Why? Because the topmost layer formed later, deposited later. So from that point of view, if we are getting some artifact from the bottom layers, means that indicates about its chronology. And if we are having date of that bottom layer, so based on that date, we might link the date of that particular object. We might say that this particular index is found from the layer number 4, which formed during 4,000 years before, or maybe uh, 80,000 years before, or 1 million year before, means this particular index was utilized by someone during that particular time when that particular layer formed. Means here we are getting date for that particular index, but not studying directly, but making a kind of comparative study with the available date of that particular strata. This is number 1. We'll go to the number 2. Suppose in the same layer, what we told the layer number 3 or 4, or bottommost layer, we are getting some evidences of ceramics, pots, we are getting some evidences of bone, we are getting some evidences of charcoal, or we are getting some evidences of stone artifact. All are present at the same place in the same layer, and we are not having date for any of those material. So in that case, what we are doing, we are trying to get date for any of those material. Maybe we are going to for the dating of the stone artifact object, or maybe the ceramics pots, maybe the grain remains, maybe the bones, maybe the any other plant remains, which will be possible for us. And we are getting date of that particular object. So based on that, one could able to say that. So the date of the another object, the second object, because all are found together. All are found together. As I said earlier, in a classroom, if one student belong to the semester one and class is going on, so we might say that second student also belong to the semester one. So like this, if we are getting the date of the stone tool, maybe we will say this particular bone belong to this particular time period. Means the user of who was present during that time belong to this particular cultural period. So this is a comparative date, and in stratigraphy, it is, it is very much helpful, because if we are getting all the material together in a same strata, same layer, we, we you to say this belong to this particular time period. Of course, here we might not get the exact date, the accurate date of that particular material, but a kind of comparative, a kind of relative, or a kind of very close date we might get. Suppose uh, we are thinking about a particular type of vehicle or house constructed maybe 100 years before or 50 years before. So if similar houses are there, similar vehicles are there, if we are getting date of one, then based on that we could able to say that another house or vehicle also use or prepare during that particular time. So this is the relative dating, and especially in stratigraphy, the strata layer used to help us to determine the date of those materials. So that's why it is helpful, and it is very easy to get the date, because uh, in archaeology, particular dating is a very expensive method if we are going for the absolute method of datings. And earlier, the laboratory is also not enough, so only few laboratories are there, and all were depending on that. And because of that, sometimes the dates are available after few years. And since it is, as I said, since it is expensive, always it is not possible to go for the direct dating. That's why the stratigraphy used to help us to determine the date. Second one is the geological calendar. So in that case, we might refer to our previous discussion, the geological time scale, where we discuss about the formation of Earth. We discuss about the formation of different strata layers. We discuss about the origin of the animals. Or maybe we discuss about the origin of culture. So everywhere we discuss different time period, about the epochs, about the era, and its related cultural feature. Its related cultural features. So as we know and we discussed earlier, the major time period, major era, that is the Cenozoic era, which is mainly responsible for human biocultural evolution. And this Cenozoic again we are dividing into two parts. Sorry, the tertiary and quaternary. And as we discussed, quaternary period is mainly responsible for the human cultural evolution. And the evidences of this quaternary we used to found from various places. So this geological calendar is very much helpful to know the broad time period. The broad time period. Again, I I am repeating, not the precise, not the exact time period, but broadly. Maybe uh, we may say that maybe 1.5 million year to 1.2 million year, or maybe that 54 million year to 60 million year, or maybe 5.5 million year to 6.5 million year. So a tentative range we used to extract from this geological calendar, because when we are saying about the geological formation, it used to extend for a long period of time, not for the day or two, or maybe years, 1 year or 2 years. So it used to extend for the long time period. So similarly, the geological time scale, the glacial calendar, the glacial deposit are also very much helpful to know, to determine the date of archaeological material. So we are discussing the glacial means the ice formation of ice, and because of the temperature, sometimes it used to it used to take a very long period of times, maybe thousands years or more than that. So it used to stage. So during that particular time, if we are having some cultural material or cultural waste product on that glacial deposit, it used to remain there till the melting of ice. So that particular glacial deposit, some cultural period is there, cultural material are there, and after few years, another group came and occupied that particular area, and they also left some kind of cultural material over there, or like this. So the different type of cultural materials belongs to different group of people who came at the different time period, remain present on that glacial deposits. So the study of glacial deposit help us to know about the date, because the first layer, the bottom layer is deposited earlier, top layer is later. So the glacial calendar also very much helpful in determining the cultural period. As we discussed in last class about the glaciation, there are, and as we told that there are four major glaciation, that is Gunj, Mindel, Riss, Orm, which was present during the Pleistocene time period. And during that glaciation, we also had the interglaciation period. There are three interglaciation period. One is Gunj Mindel interglaciation, Mindel Ridge interglaciation, Ridge Orm interglaciation. So suppose we are getting some evidences from the first interglaciation, or second glaciation, or third interglaciation, fourth glaciation, whatever may be. So that indicates about the time period, because we know the time period of Gunj, we know the time period of Mindel, we know the time period of Ridge, and we know the time period of Orm, or we know the time period of first interglaciation, second interglaciation, third interglaciation. So that time period help us to determine the date of their particular use during that time. So we are having date from the geological researches. We are having date of the first glaciation. We are also having date of the second glaciation. So that date is helpful to identify the chronology of that particular material. So this part we already discussed earlier, and this uh, glacial period help us to know the date of the material found from this particular area. So another important relative method of dating is the fossil fauna calendar. Fossil fauna calendar. So because of the change in the earth's surface or because of various factors, sometimes the organic materials, it might be the plant, it might be the animal products, came under surface or buried under the surface. And after a particular time, those plant products or animal products or plant remains, animal remains converted into fossils or it become fossilized. So fossilization process help to protect the plant or animal products. It protect from decomposition because as we know that because of the presence of acid on the earth's surface, most of the cases we hardly get the organic material from the prehistoric sites, especially from the Paleolithic sites, because this acidic soil used to destroy the organic materials. But if those organic materials converted to the fossils under earth pressure, that become more harder and remain present in intactly for a long period of time. Therefore, from archaeological sites, sometimes we get some kind of fossil remains, maybe the fossilized bone, maybe the fossilized plant remains, fossilized antler, teeth, fossilized tusks, etc. In that case, those fossilized animals, products, or plant products help us to know the date of present of that particular plant or animal. So these fossil fauna also help us to determine the date of that particular animal or plant. So similarly, the river, the river terraces, river beds are also very much helpful to determine the date of a particular object. As we discussed earlier about the stratigraphy or the study of layers, in normal cases, what happened? The bottommost layer belong to the ancient or older one, older time period, and the topmost layer belong to the recent one. But in case of river terraces, river stratigraphy, it is just opposite to that normal stratigraphy. In riverbed, what happened? Because of the heavy rainfall, because of the fluviation, sometimes the river cuts down its terraces, its banks, and the soil present on the top layer eroded earlier, eroded fast, and transported to another place and redeposited there. And again, this process when it to continue, the bottom layer again transported and deposited over that recently deposited layer, and this process continues. So in that case, sometime in reverse stratigraphy, we used to see that the topmost layer is older than the bottommost layer, because first the topmost layer used to eroded and transported. If reverse stratigraphy, you will see when the soil erosion occur, first the topmost part used to fall down and transferred to another place, then the bottom one, then the third one, fourth one, like this. So that's why in reverse stratigraphy, sometimes we need to see the topmost layer is older than the bottommost layer, which is just opposite to the normal stratigraphy or the cave stratigraphy. So whatever it may be, the terraces, reverse stratigraphy are helpful to determining the date of the cultural material. So like this polynology, polynology or pollen dating. So pollens are very tiny material, tiny object, very small, which used to transfer from one place with the help of wind or water action. And since these are very hard, it is it is usually not destroyed by the any water action or the soil, and it used to last for a long. So this polynology help us to determine the type of plant present in a particular time period, and that pollen help us to determine the climatic condition of that particular time period. So these are some kind of relative method of dating which are highly helpful in, in reconstructing the time period of a particular material. Now we'll move towards the absolute method of dating. Absolute dating. As I said, absolute dating is also called the direct dating. Direct dating. So where the dates or time is determined based on the study directly made on a particular object. And in this case, we are having some major dating technique which are highly used by the archaeologist to reconstruct the time period, the date. The first and the most important absolute date, which is more dependable than the other absolute method of date, is called radiocarbon dating, radiocarbon dating, or the C14 dating, or we may say the carbon 14 dating. So here, this dating you to give a kind of precise exact date for some organic materials. So it was W. F. Levy, a Nobel laureate in chemistry, who for the first time invented this particular technique that is called radiocarbon dating. So here we'll try to understand how these radiocarbon dates used to help us to identify the dates. So method is very simple and very scientific also. As we are aware that the carbon 12 which is present on the rays of the sun. Thus, carbon 12 used to come to the Earth's surface from the solar energy, thus from the rays of the sun. And while it used to move towards the Earth's surface, it passes through the nitrogen 14. So, a nitrogen 14 layer is present over the Earth's surface. So, when the carbon 12 passes through the nitrogen 14 layers, this carbon 14, this carbon 12 converted to the carbon 14. So, C12 plus N14. So, carbon 12 when came into contact with the nitrogen 14, it converted to the carbon 14. And that carbon 14 is received by the plants and grasses. So, carbon 12 is coming from the sun, and when it is intermingling, mixing with the nitrogen 14, converting to carbon 14, and it is received by the plants, green leaves, grasses, and it remain present on the grasses or green leaves. So when the animal eats those kind of leaves, plants, it transfer to the animal body. The carbon 12 converted to the carbon 14 present on the grasses or green plants, and when the animals use or eats those plants or grasses, this carbon 14 transferred to the body of animal and stored in their bones, teeth, etc. And a particular animal used to receive this carbon 14 till its death. Sometimes some animals who are carnivorous or they do not eat any kind of plant products directly. So in that case, question arises how they do get this carbon 14 in their body, or how it's uh, converted this carbon 14 from the grass to that particular animal body, and how they store this carbon 14 in their bones or any teeth, tusk, or antler. So one side we are saying that this carbon 14 stored in green plants, received by the green plants, and it transported to those animals who eat these plants and grasses. But what about those animals who are not having direct eating habit, or who never used to eat these plants? So in such cases, the animals, we may take example of goat or deer, who are directly depending on the grasses or leaves and having the carbon 14, and that particular carbon 14, when another animal is eating to that particular animal, that carbon 14 is transferring to that animal. Take an example, we may take example of deer and lion. So deer is depending on the grass, so it is directly receiving carbon 14 from the grass. But when a lion is depending, lion is hunting, lion is eating the deer, that particular carbon 14 is transferring to the body of the lion. So in this way, it is transferring from sun to the earth surface to the grass to the one animal to another animal. And that lion or that deer used to receive carbon 14 till its death. And same formula is applicable for all the animals, the human being, including the human being. So now thing is that this carbon 14, what these animals or plants received during their lifetime. And like the animal, these plants also receive the carbon 14 till its time of aliveness. So till it is alive, it is to receive. So once the plant will die, animal will die, that time they will stop receiving carbon 14. So the principle is same for the plants as well as the animals, including the human beings. So till their death, they are receiving carbon 14. Once they will die, they will stop receiving carbon 14. They will not receive any kind of carbon 14. And from that particular time period, they will start reducing, releasing the carbon 14 what they receive during their lifetime. So this rate of carbon 14 what present in their bones, teeth, antler, tusk, or in any plants, wood, that will reduce gradually, that will decay gradually. And after a particular period of time, it become half. It become half. So suppose the plant or that particular animal died 10,000 years before. So after a particular time, that carbon content what present in its body will reduce to the half. So here in radiocarbon dating, the presence of carbon, the quantity of carbon present on that particular material, maybe bones or any organic product, or maybe the charcoal, that help us to determine the date, the time period of that particular plant or animal. Suppose we are discussing about a plant which was present 80,000 years before, and now we are getting that evidence. So based on this carbon 14 dating, it will be very easy to know the date when the plant was existing, or based on the carbon 14 date of a particular bone, it will be easy to say that when that particular animal was present. So in this carbon 14 dating, there was a calculation which help us to know the date of that particular object, and it is the half life time period, half life of that particular carbon. Earlier, previously, it was 5568 plus minus 30 years, means 5568 years. It might slightly increase or decrease up to 30 years. That's why it is called 5568 plus minus 30. So after that much year, the rate of carbon will reduce to half, means 50%. Whatever carbon content is there, carbon 14 is there, it will reduce to half. Similarly, that is 50%. Similarly, it might be 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, or maybe the 99% or 80%. So the percentage of carbon content present on that bone help us to know the time period, the duration, the chronology of that particular object, of that particular material. As I told, that 5568 plus minus 30 is the half life. Means if a object we are getting the 50% carbon content, means we'll see we'll we'll, we'll see the time period based on this formula, and we could able to say that this particular plant or animal was present before 5005 years, sorry, 5500 years ago. So like this, so this present of quantity of carbon help us to determine the date, which is more accurate, more precise. More precise, it does not mean that we are saying in terms of second, minutes, or hours, or day. It is in terms of the years, years. So we need to get that date. But one problem is that we must have to take some kind of precaution while collecting the samples for carbon 14 dating. Otherwise, it will not give the accurate date. So then how we have to prepare, how we have to collect, how we have to store how this sample. So let's discuss this one. So as I told, this carbon 14 dating is applicable only on the organic material, and this organic material includes both the plant and animal remains. Sometimes from the archaeological context we get some kind of charred or burnt clay, burnt bones, or burnt tree or wood. Sometimes partly burnt, sometimes in completely charcoalized form. Charcoal. And these are very much helpful in determining the date. Even a small quantity, very tiny quantity, small piece of 7 to 10 grams of charcoal is more than enough to determine the date of that particular plant. And if we are getting date of that particular plant, based on that we could able to say that the time of that particular starter layer or other material what we are having from that particular site along with that particular charcoal. So we are discussing about the precaution. In carbon 14 dating, one problem is that the contamination. If we are touching that particular archaeological sample of 80,000 years ago or millions years ago in our naked hand, finger, or it is coming into contact with any kind of organic product of later period of time, it will change the date. It will contaminated, and the date will come to the material of latest one. Suppose while we are excavating, we touch the sample with our fingers or we collect it in our hand. So that particular charcoal sample will give date of recent time or present time, not the time of 80,000 years or the original time of its present. So while we are collecting, we must have to very serious about the method and technique of collection. That's why while we the archaeologists used to collect the sample, they use different kind of metal objects or plastic objects to collect and to store to prevent the contamination. So this is the broad about the radiocarbon dating and which is the more accurate dating methods till now used by the different archaeologists. So this particular dating method is applicable on the charcoal, wood, bone, shells, etc. Basically, the organic material. Sometimes the pottery ceramics also contains some kind of seeds or plant product, grasses. So in such cases, it is also helpful to use this method to determine the date from date. So this is the carbon 14 dating. Similarly, the potassium argon dating, which is called briefly K hyphen AR dating, means K for stand for potash, AR stand for argon. So this potash argon dating method, it covers the range time period up to the 4.5 billion year to 2500 years. So here this dating method is useful only on some specific area, specific situation. So like the carbon 14 dating, here the carbon 14 used to convert to argon 14, and the quantity of conversion, how much it converted, and that the archaeologist used to study, the scientist used to study the percentage of conversion, and that used to help us to know the date. And this is basically useful for the rocks and minerals. So these are the main material. So if we are discussing about the formation of earth, if we are discussing about the formation of rocks, minerals of a particular time, it is very much helpful, and that is to help us to know the date. So method is that. So here the amount of potassium present in that particular sample is calculated, and it helps to know the date. Our next dating technique is thermoluminescence dating. In brief, it is popularly known as the TL dating. TL dating. So it was F. Daniel who, for the first time, used this particular dating methods to know the date of a particular ceramics pot in 1953. So here in this dating technique, basically the temperature is measured and mainly useful to determine the date of the ceramic remains or the burnt material. So while the date is determined that time, the scientists used to calculate the amount of heat, and because of that the radiation of alpha, beta, gamma rays. So as we are aware that while we are preparing any kind of pot or ceramics, the potter used to follow a particular technique, particular method to make it more harder. So for that they prepare the pot, and after sun dry they put it into the kiln or furnaces, and burn it with a particular temperature. And that process helps to make that particular ceramic or pot more harder. And later, people use it. Suppose a potter prepare a pot and which is later period used for cooking purpose. So in that case, if you will see the temperature generated in the hearth during the cooking time is comparatively lesser than the temperature used for baking that particular pot. Usually it is believed that if the temperature is more than 750 degrees Celsius, then a ceramics will, a pot will melt. But usually while we are cooking, we are not providing that much temperature. So that's why it does not affect in the process of cooking or other things. Sometimes you will see if we will give overheat to a particular ceramic remains, it will burn, it will melt. And probably because of that, at the time of iron smelting, the evidences like ceramics, pots, wares are partly burned because that time it is required more heat than the normal time. So from the TL dating point of view, so the sample of particular ceramics pot is heated with a higher temperature than the temperature used for preparing this pot or ceramics. And because of this higher temperature, it used to radiate, it used to release the alpha, beta, gamma rays. And more rays indicates about its time period, which is comparatively old. So the quantity of rays which radiated at the time of heating indicates about the oldness of that particular object, because the principle is that when they prepared that particular pots, that time they gave a particular heat, and because of that the rays alpha beta gamma rays present on that ceramic remains radiated from that pot, and it become port. But after that, this port used to receive continuously these particles, and the old ports used to receive more such kind of particles than the recent one. So if we will put the ceramic remains of two particular time, the recent one will release the less rays, alpha beta gamma rays, than the older one, and older one will release the more rays. So the calculating such kind of rays help us to determine the time period of that particular pots. Previously, TL dating was more applicable for dating only the ceramics and up to the time period of 10,000 year PP. But now it extends beyond that. So this is also very much scientific dating used by the archaeologists to determine the date, basically mainly the ceramic remains. So next we will proceed to the dendrochronology. Dendrochronology. Dendrochronology is also known as the tree ring dating. So this particular technique was first introduced by the Douglas, A. E. Douglas. So here the ring of a particular tree help us to know the time period, the climatic condition. If we'll cut a trunk, a log, or a tree, we'll see there are some kind of circles present one above the another. There are some kind of rings present on that log. There are some kind of round marks present on the log. And some of those rings or round marks present on that particular log tree are thicker than the another one. Some are very thick, some are very thin, some are a kind of very crude, very rough, some are very fine, very thin. And it differs from the plant to plant and climatic condition to climatic condition. So these rings are very much helpful to determine the date of that particular plant. So these rings have some kind of characteristic features, some kind of reason for its formation. Usually, in normal cases, except the heavy rainfall area or fluvial area, a particular tree forms a single ring in a year. A tree forms a single ring in a year. And if there is a normal condition, the size, the thickness of that ring is almost similar in each and every year. But if we'll see, there is some kind of climatic fluctuation, there is some kind of drought or any kind of change in climate, the size, the thickness of ring will change. As I told, in normal cases, in a standard temperature, standard climatic condition, we'll see the equal thick size rings. But in case of drought for a prolonged period of time, you'll see because of less available of water content on the earth's surface, the thickness of that ring become more thinner than the previous one. Similarly, on the other hand, if there is a fluviation or continuous rainfall for few years, we'll see the thickness of that ring is more than the previous one. So this is the change based on the climatic condition. But in some places you'll see there are two rings formed in a particular area. One is thicker, one is thinner. So based on the locality, based on the region, the scientists used to study, determine the date. Suppose take an example in normal cases if we are discussing a particular tree is having 50 rings or 100 rings, means it indicates about the lifespan of a particular tree. If the tree is having 50 rings, it means the tree is 50 years old. If we are having 100 rings, it indicates the tree is hundreds year old. And out of those rings, if we are getting that some rings are more thicker than some another one, or there is a thick layer, there is a thin layer, and like this. So that indicates about the fluctuation of climate during that particular 50 years or 100 years time. Suppose out of those rings, some rings are having standard thickness. After that, we are continuously getting some thick rings. Then again, the thin rings means it indicates about the change of climate in during that particular time when we are having thick rings. So this dendrochronology help us to know the dates of that particular time period. So so these are some major absolute dating. So like this, the oxygen 16-18 ratio dating. So here the study of this particular absolute dating help us to determine the date. Basically, the climatic fluctuation occurred during our Pleistocene time. What we are discussing about the Gunj mineral ridge or etc. So here the change of oxygen isotope from 16 to 18 help us to know the date period. So this is a very slow process on and not that much accurate like our carbon 14 dating, but it is very much helpful to determine the date of the material belong to the Pleistocene time period. So here this particular date is applied to analyze the deep sea core area, the core area of sea, and that help us to know the change of climatic condition. As we know that if climatic condition is changing, suppose the glacial deposit, take an example of glacial deposit. So if the glacial deposit is very thick, it indicates for a prolonged period of glacial deposit, ice deposit in that particular area. But if we are getting some continuous ice melting, it does mean that the high temperature in that area which continued for a long period of time. And if high temperature means more melting of ices, and if more melting of ices means the flood or soil erosion. Similarly, in fluvial cases, if heavy rainfall is there, it force to erode the layers or sides or the banks of the rivers. And if more soil erosion is there, those particular eroded material, either the sand or stone, it used to enter into the deep core area of the sea. If normal cases, less rainfall is there, the force will less. If force is more, the sand particles or stone particles present on the river bank will enter inside the deep area of the sea. So this this particular technique helps to identify the stable isotope, that is the oxygen 16 and oxygen 18, calcium carbonate present on the different cells and other animal products, etc., and helps to know the dates. So like this, obsidian hydration methods, it it is also a kind of absolute method of dating which helps to study the date of archaeological material. So here the presence or change of obsidian hydrant used to help to know the date. So here, so when we're discussing these dating methods, either the relative methods or the absolute methods, all are meant, all are helpful, all are useful to determine, to know the date, the time period, or the chronology of an archaeological material object. It might be the animal product, plant product, or any kind of natural object, maybe the stone, bones, maybe the minerals, maybe the ceramic remains, or maybe any kind of metal remains, whatever it may be, used by the human being as its cultural purpose for any purpose. Maybe we can take example. Sometimes we are using some stone material in prehistoric context, maybe for hunting, gathering, tilling land, or maybe sometimes we are using some iron or any metal object for our agriculture purpose, transportation purpose, or any other purpose. We are also using some kind of bone tools, harpoons. So these materials are used by the human being, and that's why these materials are called the cultural products, because these materials are used by human being for some specific purpose. That's why these are called the cultural product. What is the when we are discussing the cultural products, sometimes we need to see some other products which are not used by human being but created by the nature. Or sometimes we you to see this some kind of natural products are converted into a particular object, cultural product by human being. So based on that, we you to name the product as the cultural product, natural product. So my point is that in archaeological dating methods, we use to date such kind of materials which are having some kind of cultural implication, cultural connection, or prepared for some specific purpose of culture, some specific cultural purposes. So we'll see in historical time, historical archaeologists, they used to study the stone, bricks, or metals, etc. Means those stones, bricks, and metals are prepared, used by the human being at a particular period of time. So to know that particular period of time, we have to go for its dating. We have to understand the date. So sometimes we are getting some ready-made dates. Sometimes we are not. So if we are not availing any kind of ready-made date, then we are going for the absolute method of dating. Absolute method of dating, where based on the material, which type of material, we use different kind of absolute dating techniques. So there are some absolute dating technique very much helpful for the organic material. There are some absolute method of dating which are helpful for the glass. There are some absolute method of dating helpful to determine the date from the metal objects. And there are some absolute method of dating helpful to determine the date from the your stones. Similarly, there are some dating methods which are helpful to give some kind of comparative dates also. So thing is that while we used to proceed to get the date, to have the date, First, the archaeologist used to see which kind of material, which kind of evidence, which kind of object is recovered from the archaeological site. What is that material? What is the shape, size? What is the raw material? And what is the context? What are the associate finds? And what are the other cultural product material found along with that particular object? So based on that, first we try to get some kind of comparative dates, some kind of relative dates. If failed, or if we are not satisfied with those comparative dates, then we proceed, the archaeologists proceed to have to get the more precise date, to get the more precise date, and that is the absolute method of dating, absolute date. But as we are aware that there are some standard dates are presently available for different kind of cultural object, cultural material, because there are lot of researches done on different cultural period, different material found from the different sites. So if we are getting similar characteristic features in terms of the shape, size, raw material, then we are not going for the absolute dating. We are giving date in a relative way. But if we want to have the more precise date, then we are going for the absolute date. And these dates, whether that is absolute and relative, these are helpful to determine, to understand the date of that particular cultural product, of that particular findings material, like this. So if we'll conclude, this particular dating technique method is highly helpful, highly required, highly usable in archaeological sciences, because sometimes we used to get some peculiar object materials which we may not able to compare with other materials. So in that case, it is highly required. And these dates used to provide some additional input to our archaeological research. So it is helpful to determine, to know the date of the particular object, time period, etc. So therefore, this dating methods is helpful in archaeological sciences. So this is all about the dating methods, what usually we use. But for these dating methods, either the relative method or absolute method. So in all cases, the archaeologists depend on the subject specialist of various subjects. We can cite the example of carbon 14 dating. So in carbon 14 dating, we are studying the presence of carbon the presence of carbon content on the organic material. And we so for studying that carbon content, we need help of the chemist. Which kind of chemicals are present on their particular organic materials. What is the quantity of carbon present on that particular archaeological material? So that we use to study, that we use to analyze. So for that, it is required of help of the scientists who are specialized in studying radiocarbon activities. So here we are studying carbon 14 dating for what? We are taking help of different subject specialists. We are studying chemical composition, we are studying the reaction, radiation, and also we are studying the composition of different kind of minerals. So for this kind of study, we are taking help of either the subject of chemistry, physics, geology, and sometime of the botany and zoology also. So how we are taking help? Take an example, we have to study the dendrochronology. And dendrochronology is the study of tree rings, analysis of tree ring. So for that, the dendrochronologist who are having an in-depth knowledge on the plants, so they used to help us. So the interdisciplinary research is very much helpful in dating technique. So we can take example, another example also from the stratigraphy. For studying stratigraphy, we are taking help of geologists, especially those who are specialists in paleogeology. Like this, to study the fossil remains of prehistoric time or past time, we are taking help of paleontologists who are specialists in studying the past organic materials, particularly the animal products. So they are helping us to study the ancient material. So here in dating method, we are taking help of various subject specialists, various techniques, methods, as well as raw material. And all the dates are useful in archaeological studies. Of course, the methods of dating used to differ from one type of material to another type of material, and sometime from one particular cultural period to another cultural period, because the time bracket of a particular dating method used to differ from another. So this is the dating technique, and it is highly required in archaeological anthropology to give a date, to know the chronology, to know the time period of a particular object. So maybe if you are having some kind of queries, we can proceed and we can discuss, continue further detail about this dating method. But above all, the bottom line is that this date is highly required to know, because as we discuss, for the objects of the for the material, especially from the prehistoric time period, are not having any kind of written evidences. That's why these kind of dating methods are highly applicable. So maybe I think you want to ask some questions. So if you are having some question, you can ask, and we will proceed accordingly.
What is the Bharti analysis?
Verb analysis, yeah, very good question. Verb analysis is the study of verb, the layers which deposited on the basically on the lake area of polar region. Suppose yesterday we discussed about the formation of ice we discuss about the glaciation. Yeah. So what happened in polar area? In polar area, we are also having some upland, lowland, some kind of lakes or water bodies where we are getting some kind of still water because of ice deposition. The water body of that particular lakes or pond become solidify and remain there. So thing is that when some kind of cultural remains, cultural products, or any kind of natural remains, natural products, we can take example of seeds, mineral, pollens, or any kind of animal products or plant products used by human being was left over that particular place. So what happened? So suppose on the ice deposit or glacial deposit, some kind of cultural activities is done by a people, particular people, or a group of people, and the leftover remains after using the leftover remain they kept there and they shifted to another place. So later what happened at the time of climatic change when that particular place become more warmer, so that particular ice deposit started melting in the cultural material or animal product or animal product plant product what were deposited above the ice sheet moved to bottomwards downwards and deposited at the base of that particular lake or pond. And again in course of time when the climatic condition due to change, again the water becomes solidify. If that temperature again it reduce. So again after that what happened? If some another group of people is coming or another kind of material is coming, it does not mean that always we will get the cultural material. Maybe because of the wind or because of the water action. Sometimes we also get the pollens or any kind of plant remains or animal remains also there. So again it used to deposit over that particular ice sheet. And after few years with the increasing temperature, again that ice used to melt, and because of that, whatever deposited over there ice sheet, it used to move downwards and deposited above the previous deposit. So if it used to happen continuously in this way, so on in this ice deposit or in that lake area or in that pond area, we used to get different layers different layers on that particular site on that particular place. So this verb analysis used to help us to identify the cultural material or any kind of material deposited on that valve, on that glacial margin, on that glacial deposit, or we may say in that particular lakes or pond or in that water body. So here, because of glacial deposit and because of change of temperature, because of increasing temperature, we used to get different layers inside the lake in or inside the pond. As I told, first one layer deposited, then because of uh, reducing temperature, again ice form, then another group of people occupied that particular area, or another material transported to that area because of wind or any water action and deposited there, and later again it went down, it fell down because of the increasing number of temperature, because of the melting of that particular ice and deposited over there. So here one thing we must have to know that when we are saying the increasing temperature, in case of lake In case of lake or pond, what it used to happen, the water body what is present, it used to solidify if temperature is reducing. And when the temperature is increasing, that particular ice used to melt. But because of the boundary, because of the surrounding hills, mountains, it never used to move outside that location. But in other cases, in case of rivers, if the ice is deposited on the top hilltop or river area, and it will melt, it will went downwards in downstream and move towards the sea or the lowland. But in case of lake, it is usually not possible. So that's why whatever cultural material present there, it used to deposit there. But in case of river, it used to move, it used to transfer from upland to lowland. So studying such kind of archaeological material or cultural material or any material deposited on that particular lake because of the glacial deposit or because of the increasing and decreasing of temperature in that particular area, that used to help us to determine the date. And that is the verb analysis. Verb analysis means the studying the layers, the sediments, the deposit present in the glacial area, present in the lakes, and any kind of stable water bodies located in the glacial area. So this is the verb analysis. So this is a kind of our absolute method of dating, absolute method of dating, because here it is comparatively intact and hardly disturbed, hardly disturbed. So like our other dating methods, so it used to give a kind of precise date. So this is about the verb analysis. I, I hope it is clear, yeah?
Sir, sir, sir. Sir, as you told the archaeological anthropology has relation with physics, chemistry, botany, and zoology, then
Yes.
why it is not included as yeah, in science as a science subject? MA,
Yeah,
na MSc anthropology or MA anthropology? It is
yeah.
generally
So I think you raise a very nice question. So it used to depend from university to university. In some universities, this anthropology, even the archaeology, now archaeology become a separate discipline, is completely coming under the science. In some cases, it is coming under the social science, and in some cases, it is the both. It depends on the university where they are keeping. But even if it is in the social sciences, for this kind of activity, this kind of test, this kind of dating method, they highly depends on the scientist. But it does not mean that it is coming only under the arts or social sciences. It depends. In some university, it is purely coming under the science. It is some university, it is coming under the social science. So you can take example from the global context, not from the typically from the Indian context. So India also you'll see in different places, and where both the uh, both the scholar from the science as well as arts, they are involved in studying archaeology. Take an example. I am giving example. If we'll see the best archaeological institute of India, that is the Deccan College, that is the Dim University located in Pune. Here it is considered as the both. If we'll see uh, Delhi University, Calcutta University, it is considered the anthropology subject is considered the science.
science subject.
So in Odisha, in some university, it is purely coming under the social science, and in some places, it is coming in both. Like take an example, Utkal University. Utkal University anthropology, some students are from the science background and they are getting MSc degree. Some students from the social science background, they are getting the MA degree. So based on their background, they are getting their degrees. And especially in some university, this is purely science. This is purely in science. So it is up to the university. So on what they are preparing, on what they are preparing. But it does not mean that it is coming only under the social science. So I think uh, this is clear, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Uh, so
Sir,
shall we?
one student after completion of a BA takes admission in anthropology, he will be counted as MA anthropology, or one student having botany zoology honors takes admission in anthropology, his case will be considered as MSc anthropology.
Exactly same. Exactly same. It to depend. Take an example. In one university, they are offering both the degrees, MA and MSc. Okay.
Yes.
As I gave the example from the Utkal University, or maybe our MSc University from where I belong to. Here we are offering both the degrees. So some students they are coming from the biosciences, zoology or botany. So they are having their MSc degree in anthropology. And those students coming from social science background, they are getting the MA degree. But in Calcutta University, whoever coming to the anthropology, all are getting the MSc degree. And in some university where they are giving only the MA degree, even if a science student joining the anthropology, he or she will get the MA degree. So it completely depends on the university what they are offering. So it does not mean that somebody is having MSc means he or she will get only MSc degree. So it is up to the university.
In IGNOR, it is generally MA in
MA in
anthropology.
anthropology because there is a reason behind that because IGNO is providing the distance mode classes. In MSc, we need the lab-based courses, lab-based syllabuses, and you have to go for the practical experiential practical test. In in anthropology, particularly the biological anthropology or physical anthropology, what we are calling in archaeological anthropology, we need more lab-based work, lab-based activities, and which will be not possible in online mode. For that, you must have to go for the lab experiments. So that's why the curriculum is designed accordingly. So where there will be less or no lab-based activities, and emphasis is more and more on social science related paper or unit courses chapters. So that's why IGNOU is providing the MA degree, not the MSc degree. But in regular mode, if you are going for regular mode, you will get both the degree. As I told, in Calcutta University, in Delhi University, this is purely science.
Science.
In Hyderabad University, this is purely social science. So this is the thing.
Sir, as you told, your dendrochronology, but that is the tree ring analysis
Yeah,
in anthropology.
yeah.
In botany, the term is known as annual ring. In botany,
Exactly. Yeah, nomenclature is different, but the thing is same. Thing is
same
same.
thing is same. Yes. We
Yeah.
can calculate by counting the rings of the log, how old is the tree.
Exactly. It is same. Only nomenclature is different. Like annual ring means here also we discussed that every year a ring used to form.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is annual. It is same. It is the same thing. It's same thing. But anyway, thing is that these are helpful to determine the time period because here in archaeological anthropology we are studying the culture, the material remains of different period of time, and these are the things which used to help us to determine their time. Otherwise it will be not possible for us because in history it's okay because sometimes we will get some kind of literature written evidences, maybe inscription, maybe copper plate inscription and the wall inscription, rock inscriptions, or some kind of palm leaf manuscript, some kind of book, some kind of literature, but prehistory we are not having. So that's why we used to depend on such kind of dating methods. This is the difference. For history, no need to go for the absolute dating or like that for all the things. Suppose from the time of Mauryan period, from the type of British period, from the time of Mughal time. If we are getting some material from that particular house, that particular culture, we are having already the record. When Babur came, when Akbar came, when the Britishers came. So if they are using a particular material, means easily we could able to say that this is used by the Britishers means This was prepared during the British time. This used during the Babur or Akbar or Humayun means this prepared during the medieval time or Mughal time or not. So
Yes.
for that it is easy, but prehistory, protohistory, it is really very difficult. That's why these particular methods help us to determine the date, help us to know the date. So this is the thing. So I hope you got the point. So broadly, our thing is that this dating method is helpful to determining the date, to know the date. So this is the thing. So shall we close or you have
No, sir. Say time is over. So you can
no,
close
no
it.
time.
We'll take.
It's okay. So time sometimes maybe we'll take some extra time, sometimes less time. So our thing is that method should be clear. And so if you, even if you are having some kind of doubt problem, you can ask in next class also. We'll try to accommodate at the end or at the beginning. So
Actually, it is a very interesting subject, and you are teaching very line by line. As I
no,
line
my
by
problem is
line.
that only is I don't know actually. I do have PPT. I wanted to share the PPT, but there is some technical problem in my laptop, and that's why I failed to just share the PPT. Otherwise, it will be more interesting. But if you are interested, maybe sometime I'll share the PPT in what we call in WhatsApp or in group. That's possible. So I'll give some kind of photographs and some PPT, so which will be more additional. It will provide more additional input to you. So if you are interested, maybe I'll share. And I think as you gave me your number yesterday, I shared some kind of study material also. So
Yes,
that
yes, I have received the under sir, very 600, 700 pages that is to be downloaded or print out to be done.
no need of go for print out. Just go for go for the pages or like that. It will give some kind of additional input. It will generate
Uh,
your interest and you will get some. Suppose in a book you got one interesting chapter, just read that one. That was enough. It
thank you,
doesn't
sir.
mean that all you will read within this limited time period. You can store it and later you can use if you are having interest. It doesn't mean that we are studying only to secure the marks. So if you are having interest, so later you can also use in your
No, no,
uh,
I shall preserve it. I shall preserve it and
yeah. So
I shall read it.
that will help. That will help you. So okay then. With this, we are stopping here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.